well. And we'll start the webinar while we'll have a few more persons who will join in probably the next few minutes as well. So just as a general guidelines on the webinar, would be great if you could keep your mic off during the webinar, and after the webinar is finished, when we have Q&A, maybe during that time a few persons could be allowed to speak as well. A quick request. So instead of having your name, your device's name, maybe if you could have your own name so that it becomes easy for us to address you with your questions whenever they come at the end of the webinar. You can ask questions in the chat window of the webinar, and we will take the questions from there, which we will take at the end. So you could have your questions coming in after every slide, but we can take the questions at the end. And initially, we'll avoid, we'll request you to avoid very specific questions. Try for generic questions, and maybe later on the webinar, or maybe during a one-to-one call, we can take specific questions. We will share the presentation of the webinar as well after the webinar finishes. Yeah. So why we are doing the webinar is essentially, one of the things that CN Beyond tries to do is enhance the learning of its subscribers, right? And maritime technology is one of the topics which a lot of people would like to know about. And there are very few companies, institutes who are addressing this in terms of learning, right? In terms of how do you upskill yourself. So one of the best ways to do is to upskill yourself, to keep yourself updated, is to hear from the credible sources, to hear from the institutes who are actually doing such or taking such initiatives, so that you can take a well-informed decision. So that's the whole idea of doing this webinar. And we have the key stakeholders from the institute who are with us, and who are essentially going to present the webinar as well. And so let me over here introduce Captain Sukhjeet, who will then introduce all the other presenters, and who then we can take things forward. So Captain Sukhjeet is a master mariner. He sailed in volumes, and after that he's upskilled himself. He's done his MSc from University of Liverpool, and he's been a professor in University of Trinidad and Tobago, and he is also the head of school on the Maritime Division for the University of Gibraltar. He's wears various hats, is taking various other initiatives as well, which I will let him kind of talk a little bit more in detail. But before that, let me take another poll to understand the audience which we have. So if you could put in what is your current rank or position. So were you sailing, and if you were sailing, at what level? Or you have never sailed, or you were sailing and you have now settled ashore. So it'll be great to have that kind of poll, so we all understand the audience that we have right now. And then I'll the platform to Captain Sukhjeet once we have finished the poll. Look for a few more answers. Got about 82% who have answered till now. All right. So I have ended the poll and sharing the results. So we've got about 60% of the persons are were sailing at top four, or who were sailing and who are now working ashore. So that's about the audience which we have. Then we've got about 17% who are working ashore but have never been on a ship or never essentially sailed on a ship, and 13% of the audience are working at an operations level. So a fairly senior audience for this webinar. And so I'll stop sharing the screen right now, the presentation, and over to you, Captain Sukhjeet.
Thank you, Gaurav. And good afternoon, good morning, hello everyone. And thank you, Gaurav, for introduction, and I welcome you all on behalf of Maritime Informatics Institute. It is a pleasure to have you all today on this virtual platform. As you have already, just confirm me with a thumbs up if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, thank you so much. As you have heard already, I mean, when you registered, so the today's webinar is all about understanding what is this maritime informatics, or let me say what constitutes informatics specifically in maritime domain. I also look forward where within this webinar we should be able to get insights from industry experts on how and where data analytics is being implemented in the shipping world, and most importantly, to provide us with an understanding of what type of skills will be needed to remain relevant in the industry, and where and how can we develop these skills which we see will be important and be future ready, right? So those are the few of outcomes which we look forward. Plus there will be some generic question and answer during the I look forward to those questions, so please do put up your questions in the chat. At this moment, let's first start with a basic understanding of how much do you know about maritime informatics, or are you aware of maritime informatics? Or if you have heard about it or you know anything about it, so please do participate so we know the balance in the audience. Okay, great. I'm seeing we have almost 60-70% participation. Please do respond if you have not responded yet. Okay, we have 84%, 86. Yes, Gaurav, you can share the results. Okay, so as we can see, about 70% of our audience is not much aware about maritime informatics, and I think that is the reason why I would say this webinar is so relevant, where we can hear from the people who are involved in maritime informatics as such. And in respect of the time, I would say I would introduce our first expert, Dr. UC Pokonen. He's a co-founder and vice president of AI and analytics at Oecd.ai, where his team develops predictive analytics, machine learning models, and also optimization algorithms for for the Awake Smartport platform. Dr. UC is also an adjunct professor of microelectronics at University of Turku. And before his current position at Awake, UC was an AI development lead at Rolls-Royce Marine, focusing on development of autonomous and remote controlled vessels. And with over 10 years of experience as senior research fellow and lecturer at University of Turku, he has abundance of published research, over 80 articles which involve telecommunication topics, emerging technologies, and neurophobic computing. So we will hear from UC where we also look forward to see a case study that how this analytics is being currently used in shipping world. Over to you, Yusi.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay. And
Yes, we can hear you loud, and you can, if you're sharing your screen.
yes, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, excellent. Very nice to be here today, and nice to meet all present. So I was asked to speak a little bit about the role of AI and analytics in maritime informatics. And it's good to know that many people are here who are not so familiar with maritime informatics in general. So I will keep to a rather high level and try to kind of highlight some of the competences that I see as, generally valuable and needed in the kind of maritime systems of the future as we get more and more digitalization in the maritime logistic chains. So I would like to start my presentation with talking about these kind of common trends in maritime information systems. And I'm using our own software platform as an example because, of course, I know this very well and very familiar with how everything works here. And this kind of highlights maybe also a little bit what maritime informatics is and what are the generic goals in these kind of systems. So we are looking here at a software platform which is meant to provide situational awareness and capabilities for data sharing between various actors in the maritime logistic chain, like port authorities, terminal operators, ship operators, and cargo owners. And it's a common problem nowadays that um, different actors work in silos, and there is no shared place for understanding what is going on in the different parts of the logistic chain. There is no situational awareness properly where all the resources are and what's really happening at this moment. And this is one of the key things that maritime informatics um, should help with. So providing better situational awareness, and on top of that, also providing predictions going to happen in the near future and prescriptions. What should you do to optimize your operations according to given metrics? Ecological sustainability or economical sustainability or just efficiency of operations. So this platform is built to integrate data from different kinds of sensors in the ports, different actors operating in the logistic chain, connecting all that information together, providing it for different people actually working, for example, in the field who need information, and also providing this kind of machine learning algorithms and AI capabilities for predicting what will happen in the future. Uh, so I wanted to highlight what are some of the trends in the industry in this kind of systems, and you can think of this as what is happening in maritime informatics, the kind of commercial and technical perspective. So one is that everything works in the cloud. So for example, the platform is running in the AWS cloud environment. uh, IoT and edge are very important things. So more and more systems running in the ports monitoring different equipment and operations, and everything is shared through these kind of modern communication systems to these kind of edge computing devices and to the cloud. Then the cloud systems themselves are based on this kind of containerized microservices running all kinds of AI and machine learning services. And information is more and more shared through APIs, so that is application programming interfaces. So these kind of, let's say, common interfaces for sharing data in a commonly agreed format. And of course, all of this requires a lot of integration. So systems need to be connected to each other through these kind of APIs to be able to share all this information. And typically, applications are more and more web and mobile applications where the actual intelligence is in the cloud. And then you just have this kind of relatively lightweight and adaptable interfaces for the applications. Now, I was asked to talk about analytics and machine learning, so wanted to highlight where that is relevant in these kind of modern information systems. And of course, the AI and machine learning services are one place. Also, the IoT systems are very kind of, you need to understand data analytics there. The APIs and integrations all require kind of understanding of what data is and how it should be handled. Yeah, so one practical example of using AI and ML in these kind of systems is shown here. So this is a picture of or a screenshot of our berth planning tool on the left, where you can do uh, plans for vessels port calls, which is kind of just modernizing the classical port call planning, but then we integrate these kind of AI capabilities there. So the AI systems are then monitoring everything that is happening from the different systems that are integrated and providing predictions and recommendations. For example, if schedules seem to be changing, a vessel is coming late or early, that is integrated into the planning, and the planner can right away take that into account. But yes, I wanted to highlight some of the competencies that are needed in the different kinds of AI applications in maritime logistics. Divide these applications, for example, in this kind of field. So these exist in the sea, port, and hinterland side, and go from this kind of, let's say, automated uh, equipment like autonomous vessels and trucks and UVs, to monitoring things that are happening in the port, at sea, in the hinterland, to this kind of predictive asset management, to fully, let's say, cloud-based scheduling and optimization things like monitoring vessel and port schedules and trying to optimize everything. And of course, like for the people actually working with these kind of systems, there are a lot of very in-depth technical competencies required, from robotics, signal processing, communication systems, all kinds of engineering. Um, so that is very kind of focused to how you implement these kind of systems. But what I would say is a very common need in the future in the whole maritime industry is really understanding data, because all of these systems are more and more reliant on having good data, being able to store good data for the system realization, and kind of knowing what to do with that. So I wanted to list here like something that you should understand about data. And this is pretty much for everybody who is working with this kind of modern system. So you should understand data types, data structures and formats, how data is stored efficiently, and what kind of processing is commonly needed for data. So I won't go through all of these, but the presentation will be shared, and kind of one thing is to go through these things, and if you don't understand what something here is, then that's already like a place to start looking at training or information. To end this, I want to just highlight one little bit larger application of analytics, an example of maritime informatics. We had a publication with Wolfgang and Mikael about this earlier. So this is in an EU project together with Port of Valencia and Livorno. And the idea here is that we want to predict the hinterland traffic activity rates caused by port operations to enable, for example, better city traffic management and resource handling by the port authorities. And the solution implemented is an AI system which predicts the truck traffic rates several weeks into the future based on vessel schedule and cargo operations machine learning models. And I won't go into these details very much, but what I wanted to just highlight is the kind of things that happen when you're developing this kind of system. So if we go from the top, the whole work starts with this kind of political and kind of let's say contractual part, where you have to gather the different actors who own the different data needed to build this kind of system, which can be like a year or two of negotiations before you can really have access to all this kind of necessary data, as for example shown here. So we have AIS data is commercial, port calls, also kind of public, but needs to be gotten from the port authority. And then we have cargo operations and gate events, which are very much private and owned by, for example, terminal operators. So that requires some willingness of collaboration between these actors. And when you have data, then the work starts with kind of finding the good part of the data, finding how to combine these different data from the different sources. So you need a lot of different IDs which you can use to combine, for example, vessel movements to truck movements to container movements to gate events and so on. And that leaves you with a smaller and smaller part of good data to work with. And when you have like a data set that you know is good and you can work with, then the actual kind of data analytics starts. So that's the kind of machine learning part and building these kind of prediction models to give you some insights into the processes. And the final part is, of course, really then deploying this whole system and how you run it day to day. And then it goes to this, for example, cloud services that I discussed earlier. All right, I think we don't have time for much more. This was a very quick kind of overview, but hopefully gave you some ideas about what the role of analytics generally is in maritime informatics. Thank you.
Thank you, Jussi. You can stop sharing your screen.
Yes. I can just,
okay. Once again, thank you, and at least the presentation was clear and conveyed at least a basic understanding that there's a goal to use the data that is accumulated through let's say some data sharing to develop and implement some sort of shipping analytics. And the idea behind doing this is to achieve some advanced level of operational performance and strategic planning, which can certainly contribute to capital productivity, or if I look into my research area, more sustainable measures within the shipping industry. So it's maritime informatics as basic understanding is all about understanding, collecting and then the data and then predicting and advising the maritime activity by digital means, if I would summarize that first part. Thank you so much again. And at this moment, I will just briefly explain a little bit how we are going to move forward, because we wanted to keep this session very informal, more like a discussion on the topic. So I will introduce our esteemed panel here. We will have a certain questions which we have collected through various other inputs that to give us a good understanding, and then we will take the questions if any in the chat and polls after that, and then we will have a Q&A section in follow-up. So at this moment, I will introduce our remaining three speakers, which is first one is Wolfgang. He is Wolfgang Lemache. He is operating partner at Anchor Group and advisor at Topan AG. He's former head of supply chain and transport industries at World Economic Forum, president and CEO emeritus of GeoPost Intercontinental, and is also on the advisory board member for Logistics and Supply Chain Management Society. So welcome, Wolfgang. I mean, it's extensive, very huge bio, but I would stop here. I apologize for that. Similarly, Dr. Michael Lind, he is adjunct professor in Maritime Informatics at Chalmers University of Technology and senior strategic research advisor at RISE, which is Research Institute of Sweden. Lind serves as an expert for also World Economic Forum, Europe's Digital Transport Logistic Forum. He has been the lead author of many concept notes associated to maritime and transport informatics, which is brought up in various trade press and on UNCTAD publications. And he has become recognized as a thought leader in maritime informatics. And he's a close friend also. Welcome, Mikhail. And last but not the least, we have Jillian. Jillian Carson Jackson. She, many of us know her as the president of Nautical Institute, but here she is in a different capacity, I would say, and also the vast experience over 3 decades in the industry. She has worked both afloat and ashore, including 10 years as an instructor. So following an active role in ILA in the development of BTS training, she moved to Australia, and then she worked very closely with the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. And in recent, she has been working in skill building and how we can make the trainings more relevant to the needs of the future, right? And as we say, currently as the Nautical Institute president, we would like to hear her thoughts of where we see these skills set going in the future, especially from the seafarers' perspective. So welcome, Jillian, also. And with that introductions, I will start with an opening question to each of the speakers. So my first question would be to Mikhail, where you can start with giving us some insight into again, a simplified version of what is maritime informatics and why is it relevant?
Thanks a lot, Sukit, and I'm honored to be here. And first of all, I must say that this journey about trying to understand what digitalization would mean for sea operations started already in 2010 by us. And I'm very, very happy to see here now that there is an escalating or emerging knowledge base that very much is captured on something called www.maritimeinformatics.org. What is it all about? It's about that we are developing and seeing new patterns of operations and practices due to the fact that everybody becomes more connected in different ways. And that has brought a number of us together to reflect upon what would it mean and which kind of effects would you derive from having more access to data in different ways. We do have in the maritime sector for a long time, we have had AES data that can be used, as you saw that Jussi talked about, that can be used for several different types of analytics. But overall, maritime informatics is focusing upon how can we digitally collaborate in a better way? How can we pursue data sharing and enhance our decision making, and how can we perform more data analytics? And it is about responding to organizational, global, and humanitarian concerns, linking the maritime sea transport to the overall supply chain, which means that we have in focus both what happens on board ships, between ships, to safe navigation, and also to synchronize and coordinate the operations that happens inside ports. And this for sure then means that we need to develop the skills of people also to adopt this type of thinking. So in essence, maritime informatics is about the application of information systems to increase efficiency, safety, ecological sustainability, and resilience of the world shipping industry. And we have done this effort to secure that practitioners and researchers join forces in this, what we can call a science for change. In that knowledge base that you see on maritimeinformatics.org, there are more than 250, I think it is now, co-authors that has actually been establishing this knowledge base coming from the largest shipping companies, the largest ports, and etc. and maritime authorities, international organizations. So this has become a very much of a movement where we are putting ourselves on the spot to avoid paving the cow paths, meaning that we need to not digitalize or put emphasis on routinizing potentially behavior and operations that hadn't been possible before without digitalization. So there are new patterns actually coming up. And to conclude, this is a driver for the maritime and education and training of the future. what we believe. And that is also what we see in many different places now. So thanks a lot for that. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikhail, for that understanding. And certainly, I would say the expectations also from the because if we understand shipping is a derived demand. So it is not only that what is happening in the environment we are impacted by that, but it also depends who is deriving this demand and what are their expectations from shipping. So it's imperative that we change in that direction, and certainly with the onset of digitalization and how it can contribute to two main things, I would say. One is the safety and then the sustainability of shipping, I think is key. And if we look in a very generic way, me coming from very operational background in shipping, I can see the say 1960 onwards till 2000, it was all about safety, and now the shift in this century is going to be sustainability of shipping and then digitalization, and I would say now advanced step as informatics, how it plays role in that is key, and then certainly putting ourselves or skilling ourselves in that in alignment to that is also very important. Thank you again, Mikhail. I'll come back to you as we move forward. My next question is to Wolfgang, because with extensive experience in global supply chains, and as I said, shipping is a derived demand. We are just facilitating a section of a larger global supply chains. So what are the important trends in supply chain digitalization, and how you see that shipping can align to that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the trends, I almost have to smile. I have been active in all modes and work with all modes of transport, and whether it's air freight, whether it's sea freight, surface, which is road and rail. And evergreen trend is visibility, because visibility, transparency is what we need to manage what you have mentioned, Sukit, which is in fact cost, which is in fact precision in terms of arrival times, which is safety, and which is sustainability. Or sustainability for me is a very big term, but the environmental impact and the social impacts, right? So in fact, creating a level of visibility that allows to ensure that we are respectful and yeah, precise with all these aspects. That's a big trend. So, and why is visibility such a big trend? Visibility is data. Visibility is data sharing. Visibility is in fact the base, or visibility and data are the basis for many applications in the supply chain. So it is the dream. And why is it's the dream? Because if we have tools, and let's go really in supply chain management, tools that are data-based, we can really manage the supply chain. Otherwise, we can only pray that the ship will arrive, that the container gets on the plane, that the container gets on the ship, that the truck will hold and has no problem on its way, and we wake up in the morning and have a nice email in our inbox. So data visibility is the foundation for managing the supply chain. And then what it first does is telling us what is, and some people would call it descriptive analytics, right? We know where things are. But then there is another element, because we would like to know if we take this and that decision, what means that for the supply chain? So, there we come to maybe the queen of machine learning, which is prescriptive analytics. So we as humans have limited visibility, but if we get all the visibility in the supply chain system, we are reaching the limits of our brain computing capabilities. So we need machines and engines to give us advice and options. And that's for me what I'm describing, a big trend, which is the entire analytics part, whether it's descriptive, whether it's predictive, or whether it's prescriptive. Prescriptive is the engine which tells us what we should do. But I always say that we can only trust the engine to a certain extent. So we need the human oversight. With all the love I have for data technology and analytics, I think the human element plays an important role. But this trend, if you want to take a big term, it's the machine-supported decision making. So that's becoming a very big topic, and that's also in the heart of skilling, because to leverage the technology, we need to be able to use the technology and then drive out of the data the right options, and then maybe make our calls. And the third is probably the automation, because you can, once you have that, you can in certain area automate. The machine looks at the data, the machine analyzes, and the machine takes the decision. That's also, and maybe taking another cut to it, it's connected supply chains, which I look at since quite a time, which means that all these modes, which are today quite operating in isolation, right? Air freight has little to do with sea freight. It is the human element, it is the forwarder, the broker that brings these people together. But we need to connect it all to make not only these good decisions across one mode, but to make the best decision leveraging all modes and all options we are having. And to do that, we need to connect the supply chains to a way that we create a maze of data across all the modes to take the right decision. And it's not as far as people may think, because we know that maritime goes from port to port, but then there is the truck, right? So we need to connect, and there's rail, and we have also sea air. So there is conceptual and operational connectivity, but we see more and more also digital connectivity, which is the fourth trend I mentioned.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang, and I would certainly appreciate, this is a very insightful thing, especially how I see the connection between, because sometimes when we are operating in maritime domain, we don't see the bigger picture of the bigger supply chain, which we are just a small part, and certainly the message conveyed is very clear that for a bigger gain, we need to look at the bigger picture and how we can integrate, and then certainly the predictive analysis through informatics will certainly help us in that wider integration across the supply chain. Thank you so much. I'll again come back to you. Now, Jillian, I mean, we heard from the the experts of the informatics, but let's come back to our operational and more seafaring background. So what is your opinion? How you think or how important are informatics skills in maritime industry? And you can, while answering this, I would also like to have your opinion, or you can share your recent experience on training trends, how you see that training is facilitating or upskilling for digitalization, or preparing us for the future. Over to you, Jillian.
Thank you. And there's a lot in there, actually. But I guess one thing that might have, as a simple seafarer, I was looking at UC's presentation, and I do see all of the terminology, the cloud, APIs, IoT, edge, AI, ML, predictive, prescriptive analytics. And coming from a seafaring background, getting into this and trying to understand all the terminology, one thing I want to say is that data analytics is important for everyone. And we are actually using and interacting with data and data analytics every single day. I drove recently to go meet up with some friends in town. I popped it onto my Google, and I was watching my route, identifying where there might be some traffic coming ahead, and I had altered my route slightly. Well, that's from data. That's from data being analyzed and presented in a manner that, as a user, maybe I don't understand all the terminology, all the mathematics behind all of that, but I do understand that I am interacting with that data. So as seafarers, we are producing data. So as seafarers, we should be using that data. We should understand the importance of that data. And I really do believe that maritime informatics is this enabler to make that link between the practical aspect of those who are dealing and producing and interacting with the data on a daily basis, to actually then identify how that will make their lives better. We can't make effective use of the data if we don't understand the importance, how it's collected, what data we can trust, what data we can't trust, how do we engage with that data. This is really the fundamentals from a practical point of view of maritime informatics. And it's important for those afloat. It's important for engineers, navigators, ratings who're starting to use technology. It's also important for those ashore, as we've heard, within the cargo chain, but also at the regulators level. Risk-based assessments for port state control. We've been doing that for a long time already. We have more data coming in. From a commercial point of view, linking into that just-in-time arrivals, and that was, you know, the JIT, the just-in-time that was in that case study, excellent, really fit well. And what I see now in the education environment, so to go to your second part of your question, is that we are seeing education and transition globally. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, probably know them as the OECD, they have recognized the need to better understand the benefits and the challenges of the digital transformation. And it's not just in maritime, it's all around us. So the OECD Digital Education Outlook for 2021 highlights this concept of smart data and digital technology. So we need to, as seafarers, increase our digital intelligence, understand what the data means, and that will mean that we'll have this opportunity to work within this increasingly digital environment. We're moving even beyond digital transformation to this human-machine integration. I think that Wolfgang was highlighting as well. We are working with machines, machines are working with us. We need to have the ability to understand what that means. So we have to look, I really believe, we need to be future ready with skill sets that don't rely on how some specific tool worked or equipment specific education. You need to understand what the tool should be able to do for you, because we cannot understand what tools we will have even tomorrow or next year, because technology is changing and evolving so fast. So I think we need to focus in the maritime industry on upskilling digital intelligence, understanding what the data is, how the data can be used, and how we can either trust or distrust data. So, and that human-machine interface, we need to understand where did that information come from, how can I use it to help me, or, because there's so much of it, is that data actually not relevant to the job that I'm doing? So I think a bit of a summary there. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Jillian, and it's clearly understood. I mean, okay, we as seafarers, we may not be, I would say, technically at that level where we are writing a language or writing the programs, but certainly understanding that the data which would be used by, say, analytic scientists or anybody, even a machine is using, that decision is going to be only as good as the data being provided. And certainly I believe very strongly that understanding that bigger picture is important, because where is this data being produced? And the modern ships, as we are modernizing, they are the data centers. The amount of data generated on board a vessel is huge, and it is being used in various ways, which sometimes become unimaginable, right? So clearly it's very important that somewhere in the I would say maritime education and training, these concepts also needs to be part of that. I mean, unfortunately we are at that stage, and then maybe by next year we see the revision of STCW where because even if you look at the energy efficiency or sustainability topics, they are not part of the core competence as such, even now. And how much is done for the future seafarers is up to the hands of the maritime education institutes or schools and what they teach, and to keep our future force future ready, we need to be at the point with all these things. Thank you again, Jillian. My next question is for you, UC. I mean, this is from audience. I would say there was a question on, is blockchain technology being used in maritime informatics?
That's an interesting question. Yes, blockchain is kind of well, it's more about this kind of contractual things and automating, for example, the generation of quick contracts between parties in the logistic chain, I believe. So as such, it's a little bit outside of my expertise, as it is not really to do with so much with analytics or AI. But I would say yes, it is part of the maritime informatics, of course, and there are more and more applications of this kind, like where there are problems with, for example, with related to securing containers and ensuring that only the right people have, for example, the keys and access to a physical container, and really recording like who has had access to a container. So there are kind of classical solutions for that, but for example, blockchain technologies are a possible way of getting advantages and making that more secure, reducing, for example, this kind of illegal goods trafficking and such things. So I would say yes, there is definitely possibilities there.
Thank you, UC. Mikhail, Wolfgang, you want to add to this?
Yeah, blockchain is definitely used in supply chain. It's very often not the main piece, but it's a part of the solution. Everybody knows TradeLens, and that TradeLens kicked off the initiative as a blockchain initiative, although it might not be the main core technological solution in it. Everything which is related to payments can have elements of blockchain. There are financial institutions that have blockchain solutions which find applications in terminals, for example. Very concrete. It's in the public domain. And then there is the whole documentation side. Blockchain is used to ensure the authenticity of documentation. You can also say authenticity of packaging and boxes, but it gets popular in the space of documentation. And in global trade, we know letter of credits. Letter of credits can be supported by blockchain. You can turn them into smart contracts, or combine it with smart contracts that when specific conditions are fulfilled, automatically payments are arranged, for example. So blockchain is maybe not the biggest revolution, but it gets its place.
Thank you, Wolfgang.
Maybe I can just say that as one of the cornerstones of maritime informatics is digital collaboration. Blockchain, as we regard it, is one possible technology that can be used to ensure digital collaboration across nations, organizations, and on the global level.
Okay, thank you, Mikhail. We have, going in the next part here, we do have some poll questions for the audience to participate in, and while I'll request Gaurav to switch on the poll. I can have one by one, starting from you, Mikhail, quickly. What you see are some of the challenges in understanding is developing, and since 2010 we are in a better position when we speak about informatics. But what are some of the challenges still which are not letting us gain that momentum?
So I mean, we do have and work in a what we can call a self-organized ecosystem of operations when it comes to the maritime sector, and that also goes for pushing the opportunities coming out of data analytics and so on. And what I think we see now is that digital data sharing is becoming more and more accurate to push, in the sense of that organizations and people realize that it is not any longer possible to hide behind it, because there are so many possible sources for bringing out that data that would serve as a foundation for doing the data analytics, and thereby we would also come to a point where we can get much better informed, as we need to be coordinated with others in order to pursue high performance operations in the maritime industry.
Thank you, Mikhail, and please, I would request audience, we do have the poll on, so we have another 30 seconds, so please do go on and then put on your response. We have 3 questions there. One is about your the way how analytics is changing your organization, and next one is on the current skills. And the third one is the lack of internal data analytics skills, how it is impacting the ability to meet organizational goals. So please do respond to it, and then we will share the result. And I would wait for another few seconds. If anybody, please do. We have only 70% participation so far in the poll. Thank you. I see yes. Okay, great. We have the yeah. So Gaurav, can you share the results now? I think we already crossed 80% participation. Okay, so we have the results here. Hopefully you can see the results. And at the same time, I will go back to the experts with the results. In the meantime, don't forget, if you have any questions, I'm seeing some questions coming in the chat. We will take it after the discussion on polls. So we have results in front of us. I would request experts, can you see that?
Yes, I can see it. We can scroll down and see the whole.
Yeah, okay.
It's very good.
I would like one by one, so we can take from the first one where how the data analytics is changing, and then if we see it's about say 49% agree and 8% strongly agree, so it's a majority there, and then there is a big 32% which doesn't agree or disagree. So I would like to have both Wolfgang and Mikhail's opinion quickly on that. How you see? I mean. Okay, let's try to have a non-biased opinion quickly, that things are changing, we know that, but how you see they're changing, or maybe you see you can share also a practical example where you have seen collaborating with a port or a shipping line, how things have changed. This is where how they were operating say 2 years back and how they're operating now.
So yes, I think one very good example is this, that there is increased motivation for providing and sharing data that is not private and sensitive. So I mean, there is even sharing that kind of data has been quite somehow difficult for organizations. There are technical challenges like the knowledge of how to set up APIs to share data, and then the willingness to just understand that everybody benefits from when data is shared. So now there is more and more of this, drive to share, for example, let's say port call schedule data or the public parts of that, and setting up like an international system for really sharing that data enables a lot of good things. And one thing that is now very much in progress is, for example, we are providing this kind of continuous vessel monitoring services, ETA prediction services, providing those to, for example, all ports in a region, so that they can integrate this into their planning system. That's something that is very concrete thing and is continuously happening, and we are seeing more and more of those cases. So not just people looking at this system and this system and just thinking like, is everything okay, but everything is brought together and kind of made into a holistic system which helps you in your planning. But I think that's a very kind of critical thing.
If I look at this, the result of the poll questions here, for me, it's pretty obvious that we would gain higher degree of performance by more data analytics. And what I see and what I read out here is that we need to equip the human capital with such skills in order to get that going. And for me, I think it is both in professional training programs and also in the maritime education that prepares tomorrow's worker for such skills. So I think that as a pioneer in maritime informatics, I think it echoes very well why we should have this.
And maybe I can comment, Mikael. So the improvements can be in practice very small things, like if people understand what is the value of, for example, very concrete thing, say you're piloting a vessel and you need to report where it's going. So rather than just typing, it's going to Gothenburg and typing it wrong, you would select it from a list. A very small thing, but already would hugely improve the data quality of data analytics systems using this kind of data. So this is maybe something that people just don't care about or don't understand. It would not require more effort, but it would actually be beneficial for everybody. So this can be small things.
Thank you, Mikael.
I just would like to make a comment on the question one, right? Does it change or not change? It definitely changes, but sometimes it's not visible, right? So it comes say into certain tasks, like, and somebody put that in the chat, the weather routing, right? Advanced weather routing or journey optimization. That's clearly an area where data come in, but not a lot of people see that, right? Because the people who work with that is very limited. Another thing where data plays a role, it's not in the operational part, but in the whole ship design. So the simulation to reduce fuel consumption, to reduce carbon emission. So their data plays a big role in analytics. So it comes sometimes through the back door and is not that clearly visible. But it's definitely there, and it takes more and more space. Just-in-time arrivals is another example, the synchronization along the supply chain.
Thank you.
And if I know that we're running late, but I've just got to say a couple of things, just because I've also been putting some chats in the chat box, and it's really true. From a seafarer, you might think, well, what do I do that has anything to do with maritime informatics? Where does my role come in? And I can go back to even the early days of AIS, when AIS was there, and the seafarers were not changing the navigation status. So something as straightforward as that, the vessel moving, and they were still alongside the berth, but obviously they're going. We fixed that now in AIS by making it smarter, because we realized through data maritime informatics that people weren't doing it. So if the ship goes more than a certain speed, and the newer pieces of equipment now will automatically flip to underway. But without that attention to detail, every single seafarer, every report that you're doing, the rate of turn indicator that's going in there, the weather reports, if you're using the vessel observation system and providing that data in, all of that information then is critical to this concept of maritime informatics to analyze that data to make things safer. So weather, if we could be sharing weather in real time through a maritime informatics aspect, so that vessels would not know what is predicted weather, it's what people are actually seeing in weather in that area. You look at the El Faro, a real tragedy, the Livestock One, a real tragedy because they didn't have the most up-to-date weather. If we could be sharing that information automatically and actually have more access to data. Every seafarer, I believe, needs to know at least the terminology around maritime informatics, the criticality of the work that they do, the reports that might seem mundane. How much paint did I use in this maintenance? Well, every coat of paint is starting to add that little bit more weight, it's changing everything. So you've got this opportunity to learn a lot more through maritime informatics. And just by understanding some of this terminology, it's not that scary. Once you understand it, it becomes much less foreign. And I think that's where the concept of addressing the fundamentals of maritime informatics is really quite critical.
Thank you, Jillian. And certainly that extends us to the second question, and I think we have answered a part of it there, because there is a strong disagreement in that the current programs are not equipped to answer the needs. And I will take the liberty to take a question here from Captain Prashant, which says, what changes in maritime education can be made in maritime informatics so that it becomes, I would say that it becomes more relevant, or how we introduce this topic in our current paradigm of, say, maritime education, which is a very relevant question. And I would let you have the first take, Jillian.
Sorry, I was responding to something on the chat box. I'm going to be a really bad student and say, please tell me the question again.
Okay, no problems. So what I'm asking is quickly that we see in the poll already a strong disagreement that certainly everyone is of opinion that current programs are not well equipped. So how we can start a shift in maritime education, or what can be done within the current setup of maritime education to introduce such topics which we feel are relevant in future?
I think it's critical that we start, seafarers should be demanding training on aspects to do with data analytics and the terminology around that. Someone's asked, is there a book? So I think Mikhail's put that out there as well. But there is a real need to enhance the digital intelligence of all of those that work in the industry, afloat and ashore. But through the concepts of maritime informatics, learning the basics of what data is and what data can do. And there's been a comment in there about the fact that seafarers not only create data, they actually use data all the time. They use the results of maritime informatics, of data analytics every single day with the work that they're doing. So what we need to do is we need to make it accessible, identify what is the fundamental, the building blocks from a digital intelligence concept, so that we will understand better our role in maritime informatics, all the seafarers, those working afloat, those working ashore, so that we have this link and we have this fundamental knowledge, and then start moving beyond that. Now, it's not like it's going to be something that's going to be an STCW, but STCW is actually quite broad, and it does encompass a lot of elements of practical training. But this is really where the future is. And we can't be focusing on how to, work this gadget or run this widget. What we need to do is have that global concept of what is maritime informatics, what is data analytics, and what is my role in providing information, and how can I make best use of that information. It comes back to that human-machine interface, and keeping the human at the center of it, so that we're actually making the data work for us, rather than just creating data for other people.
Thank you, Jillian. And I would like to add from my experience, I think it has a greater philosophy of teaching and learning behind this, I would say, when we are speaking about the paradigm shift in maritime education. And I've seen in certain places where this has been taken, because so far the maritime education has been very traditional. The scope for which we are preparing the student is very, very limited, very, very narrow. And how it can be done, I think, is very important, that we need to bring the right stakeholders on the table and say, okay, we are not producing seafarer as a worker or as an employee. What we're looking at here is when someone graduates from a maritime school, how industry ready they are. It should not be that they start to learn their job after they graduate from the school. It's we need to bring the industry into the classroom. And one example here I see is where for any maritime education institute is to form some sort of a strategic industry group, right? So where you can bring and see what does industry demand. We need to take our regulators, the maritime administrations, into these groups and say, okay, this is what industry demands. So we cannot, I mean, this is an opportunity for all of us in whatever sector of maritime we are working in to bring that onto table and create this. Because look back at 2010, STCW 2010 came, but before that we were already using this, we were already doing this. So we don't need to be in the same mode where we are lagging the technology advancement by so many years, right? So this is an opportunity. I think where the biggest change is needed in maritime education is to bring the industry, the right stakeholders into the education, exactly listen what they want from the graduates, because then it can also be connected to the employability. Because another thing as a sector which we are dealing as of now is how many cadets which graduate engineering, nautical, how many of them find jobs? What are the reasons why they are unable to find jobs? Why are we doing this? And that philosophy has to understand that this is not a business. We are trying to look at a sector and how we continue to give quality product to the sector where it can progress in the right direction. So that is another aspect to look into for anyone who is involved in maritime education. Thank you again, and I'm sorry because we're already running a little late. So I will quickly go on number 3, which is lack of internal data analytics is limiting. So certainly there is a big agreement there also. And I would like, again, feedback from any one of the panel members that certainly it's not only about upgrading the skill, but certainly there are investments needed, as Wolfgang highlighted earlier. Knowingly or unknowingly, we are producing data and we are part of it, but it is very important we capture it so that we can use it to our benefit. So I would like a quick comment on this before we take there are a few questions and then we will close.
I can start, Stokit. I think it's very interesting that the maritime sector, from the perspective of that, we have had the AIS data feeds so many years now. I think it's like 20 years or something like that, which has been used as a single data source for different purposes. And what I think for those that were engaged in doing data analytics based on AIS data, they have shown that there's a lot of intelligence that you can drive out from that. And what we see now is that there's so much more data coming out from like the connected container or from the bridge system or from port operations in different ways, or connected cargo, etc. Which means basically that there is so much value that can be produced out of this. So therefore, yes, we need to come to a position where we actually are utilizing that source or that asset as a way to meet our goals, both on an organizational level, but also on a societal level.
Thank you, Mikhail. You see, or Wolfgang, you want?
Yes, maybe brief comment from the perspective of this kind of analytics, data analytics providers. So I don't think it's maybe realistic for all maritime companies and actors to say have a team of data analysts working for them. And that's certainly you can buy this kind of services from the kind of analytics experts. But what is really important for the organizations who are producing data to understand at least, how the data should be stored so that it can be used more easily in the future to get valuable information to use it in analytics, because you can easily just store everything, but store it in a way that makes it really hard to work with in the future. So at least getting the very basic understanding of what is my data, what are the important things in my data, how I should handle it and store it for maybe using it in analytics later. So I think that's the baseline that should be the goal for every organization.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
for me,
Jussi.
it's very straightforward, Sukit. Data and information is everything, and that has been true for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, right? If you wanted to be safe, you needed to have data. And now I think that the key competitive factor is data, the knowledge about customers, customer behavior, shippers behavior, BCO behaviors, the data about the market situation, the data about the operational environment. We spoke about weather. We can also speak about congestion. So, and the data about the internal organization, what works, data coming from machines, from assets, or data coming from people. But data, the one who can handle data has no trouble in future. That's my conviction. And in that sense, I think the poll confirms that.
Thank you, Wolfgang, and certainly, I mean, we as I say, we are already at a stage where we should be doing this, and there are given the the audience composition here. I would say there are a lot of questions in chat. I'm seeing is how seafarers and what level seafarers should be part of this. I would say, I mean, Jillian has answered that question in chat, but again, I mean, it can be easily aligned to our current training. We can have different levels of understanding at same support, operational and management level. We can, you know, again, align it with sure what's happening. And also, it's my personal opinion that as a seafarer, we are in a better position to benefit from this disruption because we understand what actually goes on board vessels. So if there is a gap between what data is telling you and what may be the actual picture, I think nobody is in a better position than a seafarer to understand that, right? So it's all about how we equip ourselves to that level. Mikhail, I have a quick question for you. The last one I'm taking here because it seems relevant. I mean, is there an estimation of the industry which is involved in maritime informatics in dollar value? Is there any available so far? Because I have not seen that, but
I don't think so. But I mean, one way you can talk about it is to say that data analytics and digitalization concerns the whole sector. And maybe it is so important. So the US government stood up and said that we need to initiate a project where, in order to overcome the congestions in LA, which you probably know, many of you here, that there's a lot of ships in line to get into the Long Beach ports, that if we can share data so we can plan better ahead to handle and manage that situation, it would resolve a lot of situations. So it is very, 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 very high up on the agenda, which means then basically that it concerns a lot of dollar.
Thank you, Mikhail. And with that input, I would say like to conclude that part of the webinar, and certainly in a very summary, I think we have a better idea now as audience that what exactly is maritime informatics, how relevant it is to the industry, and how we can equip ourselves. So when, I mean, there is a question now coming in, how do we equip? And I'm just going to speak to that. If Gaurav, you can share the screen again, right? For the because the Maritime Informatics Institute is already here, and you can see here. I mean, there is a poll. Would you be willing for to take part in a training program, or how you can equip? So you can answer that if you will be willing or not, and then if interested, what are the key factors which would help you choosing a program, whether it needs to be credited by industry or some academic institutions, and how you would like, because as I would say, as we are working in this field of maritime informatics, we have developed some certain courses, but we are still looking into the expectations, and as I highlighted earlier, it is of no use if it will not answer the industry needs. We don't want you to equip with something which industry doesn't want, and similarly, which also it's important to understand what are your needs will be there as a participant, right? So please do answer, because this is a very key takeaway, at least from our side, from this webinar, as we work in the development of our initial course. You would also see on the screen about our web page, maritimeinformatics.org, which Mikhail shared earlier. You can scan the QR code. The top one will take you to the Maritime Informatics. The one at the bottom is our contact in LinkedIn. You can connect with us there, right? And this website, if you will see, it is a repository of knowledge in itself. So far, whatever research has been carried out, is the articles which are available as a free source. Everything is here on this data. So anybody out of you who is interested to know more about the role of maritime informatics, or is interested in more research to learn more about it, please feel free to browse the web page. You can also contact us through the web page or the LinkedIn. We are available here. Okay, we have the results, so we can clearly see, I mean, there is a demand, and I would say also, Jillian, if you can jump in here to just give us a quick, I know that we had submitted the first program to Nautical Institute to review, and they have a kind of approved of it, right?
Yes, so we did submit our initial Fundamentals of Maritime Informatics program to the Nautical Institute, and they've actually identified that it is suitable. So they've given us their tick for continuing professional development from that program point of view. So it's been reviewed and accredited at that level through the Nautical Institute. The concepts, and I'm really interested to see, that's why I was so busy on the chat box, to see the questions that are coming in. From a very practical point of view, I really believe that maritime informatics is for everyone in the maritime industry, and it's not just for the academics, it's not just for those like you see in AI, to actually just do the formulas and gather the data. As seafarers, as maritime professionals working in BTS, we are using the data that comes from maritime informatics every single day with our decision-making tools. I think there was a comment in the chat box on that as well. So in order to make the best use of that data, we need to actually understand what that data means, when that data is useful, when it is that we have to step in and say, no, that information is not appropriate. That's where the seafarers come in. So I think it's really, really critical. And a great program in there about online rather than classroom courses. Yeah.
That point is noted, and I can assure you our first offer of training would be online, and most likely not only online, because again, as we say, this is not about just another training program or just have some additional certification. It's more about the passion with which this topic is being pushed and making sense of it all. So it'll not only be answering the group. So if we have a registered people who want this type of training, we will look into whether it would be an online, or they want to meet in person, or whether they want to attend at certain place, a port or an organization using it. So it will be taking all into account the needs of the audience who is at that time becomes to part of training. So we can start with online, but then we have another audience which doesn't want online, and so we will look into all the aspects, including the time of delivery, because again, we understand as jumping from sea to shore, or when you are off, on board, what kind of internet you have, all that can be taken into account. We are very flexible in understanding that. And at this moment, I would like to thank you, all of you, for joining us and staying with us till the end. And I'm very happy to see the amount of interest the topic has generated and the relevance of it. I also thank you, my colleagues here, UC, Wolfgang, Mikhail, and Jillian, and thank you so much for sharing your expert thoughts, and all the people who put up questions in the chat. Thank you so much. With all that, I will expect some of you joining us on LinkedIn or making queries on Maritime Informatics webpage. With that, I hand over to Gaurav again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Surjit, and all the presenters, Wolfgang, UC, Jillian, Mikkel, for putting your point of view. Just a couple of cents from my side, and then this webinar brought me to the time when I joined IBM. So essentially, as a master mariner, 15 years sailing, and I did my MBA, and IBM gave me an offer which I took. And my first week in the IBM office, and people were talking about and I could see UC's first slide, when he showed his first slide, and I was like, there's a lot of technology, a lot of jargons over there, and it just took me back to that my first week over there, and I was not able to understand anything. But slowly and steadily, I realized, and I had to do a lot of studies, that after maybe 6 months, I realized that why IBM took me, why as a mariner I was able to add value to the data scientists that they had. In fact, I was leading a team of, I was program managing 2-3 projects for ports and logistics that IBM was doing. So it was, I mean, and how the webinar went also, wherein we actually talked about technology, how it's going to help. And then finally, when Jillian told that how as seafarers, how as mariners, we will be able to, bring that subject matter expertise, which probably no other person can bring. So there will be the data scientists, the technology guys are very highly unlikely to learn about shipping, right? Especially sailing. But we as sailors, we as mariners, we as subject matter experts can learn about technology, maybe not coding, but maybe at a 10, 15, 20% level, and that's more than sufficient for us to bring value to the industry, to help the companies increase their efficiencies, and one of the things which a lot of people increase their employability. There is a huge demand of such skill sets. There is a huge demand for such persons that the industry wants. And See and Beyond is doing that, most of you would know, but companies are not getting that kind of person. So if you are able to upskill, if you are able to show that kind of courses, knowledge on your CV, you would be in a better position over a period of time. It will not happen overnight. It will be a struggle, let me tell you, but especially to the guys who are in their 30s, maybe early 40s, this is the way to go, because you will find a lot of opportunities. So yep, with that point of view from my end, I'd probably like to close this, and really it was a very, very interesting session. All of you bringing your point of view, all the presenters, participants, giving your time. Thank you so much. One final poll that I will take, which is on the feedback. How did the participants, you had certain expectations when you registered yourself? Were those expectations met, and how would you rate the session? And if you have any suggestions in terms of improvements in the next webinar, if you have any suggestions in terms of courses that you would like to take, maybe which Maritime Informatics would bring, you can probably put them right now in the chat window, or you could email us as well, and we'll at least send the message out to Maritime Informatics as well. So we'll wait for a few more answers on the poll, and then we could call this off. I have just put in the email ID which you could email, or the links where you could follow CN Beyond. I'll also put in the link for Maritime Informatics as well, which you can follow. Okay. Let me share the results. So to most of the persons, the expectations did meet or exceed, and the rating was also good or excellent for most. However, a couple of persons, the expectations were unmet, and I'll probably connect with you guys after the webinar. And if you would like to write something on the chat window, we could address that as well. So thank you so much for the feedback from all the participants. Thanks for the message, Jillian. I think to get a role ashore, investigate, upskill with digital knowledge. I think that's a very, very important thing. And with upskilling, your opportunities will automatically increase. Yep, that's it from CN Beyond and us, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Take care, everyone. And hopefully, as I said, please go on our webpage and you can register your interest. So I see some questions coming up. When would be the first course, or what any sort of training? As I said, everything is very fluid because we cannot be maritime informatics if we don't take the data into consideration in planning our training. So as we receive information from you, everything will be based on that. So whether it's September or October, but it will be based on the interest and the kind of interest, because it's not only that how many people are interested, we have to take into account what is the background information, what level you have been working in industry, what are your future interests. Everything we are taking into account when designing any module for training. Thank you so much, and enjoy your afternoon. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rajit. Bye.